University. She was a gold medalist in her master program that she completed from Hyderabad Central University. She has a teaching experience of 18 years and is currently working as an associate professor since 2021 in the prestigious Hindu College, Delhi University. She has a number of research papers, articles and books to her credit. She is guiding 6 research scholars for PhD. She has recently completed a project on goddess Kamakhya as a principal investigator. Dr. Barua is also currently a co-project investigator in a multi-country John Templeton funded project, Concept of God and the Variety of Theism in Indian Tradition. Further, an interdisciplinary project on ecological restoration awarded by Hindu College, and a project entitled Moksh Bhavan, Salvation Portal of Kashi, a phenomenological attempt to understand the Bharatiya model of religion, awarded by ICSSR, have been her current academic engagement. So with great joy and anticipation, I now invite Dr. Ananya Barua to deliver her special lecture from The Cave to Color, Mary, Plato and the Phenomenology of Awakening. So ma'am, the floor is all yours.
Firstly, thank you so much to the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies, for finding me worthy enough to speak a few words on a theme on philosophy of mind. As I stand here to speak in front of the august gathering, I am humbled with the sagacious minds that have had graced this environment of BHU and seeking the deep blessings of Phenomenology and all the great minds. I am here today. I must also definitely thank the HOD sir, Chaudhary sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind welcome. And of course, the convener, Dr. Priyanka, and definitely the entire Department of Philosophy, Neeti ma'am, and everyone who are here today. So, the thing that I will be speaking today is, as I have said, in the area of philosophy of mind, which has been my specialization in my PhD days in JNU. I have tried my best to tailor it to the needs of the research scholars, the PG and UG, and I'm sure we will be dialoguing a lot after the session today. The very title of today's article is entitled as Cave to Color, Mary, and the Phenomenology of Awakening. So when I'm talking about cave here, it is obviously Plato's Allegory of the Cave that we will be diving in. And when I'm talking about color, it is about this color scientist called Mary. And we would also like to connect it with Krishna and Arjuna, which would be the phenomenology of awakening in the later part. So without much ado, I will be starting my article now. Now, this paper revisits 3 archetypical moments of awakening: Plato's released prisoner, Frank Jackson, the very phenomenal conscious scientist's Mary, and Arjuna's Vishwarupa vision, to explore the perennial puzzles of consciousness that animate the philosophy of mind, which is the mind-body problem, the explanatory gap, and the nature of phenomenal awareness. Across ancient and modern texts, these movements dramatize the transition from representational knowledge to lived experience, from consciousness of to consciousness in itself. Now, this would be my key engagements today. So the first thing first, let me start with the cave, darkness, and then we will attempt to go towards light. Now, all of us, I'm sure we have read Plato's Republic, and so we are quite well versed. Nevertheless, for those who might need a revision, let me just quickly tell you that as in the Allegory of the Cave in chapter 7, I think of page number 514a onwards, Plato cites about these possible situations where everyone is born in a cave. And they are born in such a way that their hands are tied from behind, and the face is directed to the wall of the cave. Also, very nearly, there is a fire that is always burning at the very threshold of the cave. So what is basically happening is whichever the objects, the shadows that are being reflected on the wall of the cave is always taken as the real objects by the prisoners or by the imprisoned prisoners, because that's what they had always seen. They had never seen the outside world. As the allegory of the cave further continues, one of them kind of frees himself and he goes outside the cave for the very first time. The minute he tries to set his foot outside, he isn't very comfortable because his comfort zone always was darkness. So that moment when he steps outside at the very threshold of the cave, he gets bedizzled. His retina, his pupil of the eyes are not able to adjust to the bright light. So what he does is, his comfort zone, what was his comfort zone? The shadows. So he tries to see his comfort zone, the shadows first. That is his first point of interaction when he goes out of the cave and sees the shadows and he feels, all right, there's something familiar here, something I had known all my life as real, and I'm feeling sorted. But then when he sees the shadow of the tree, he wonders, wow, there seems to be an owner of this tree. I thought that the shadow is all in all, but that's not the case. There seems to be somebody over and above the shadow who owns the shadow. And then who is that owner? He realizes it is the tree, or as of that matter, the birds, the shadows that he had always seen in his life. That is a defining moment of his when he very softly, very silently tries to gaze from the comfort zone shadow to the object of the tree. And then he realizes that, okay, all this life that I had thought that this is the real world is actually an illusion. So that is a kind of an awakening that is happening to him by and by. Now that he has seen the object, he wonders that, my God, there's so much of light, there's so much of brightness. There has to be a source from which all is getting illuminated. And then he realizes the true source is the sun that is shining brilliantly above him. And for the very first time, he dares to look up the sun. That is the awakening, the defining moment for the freed prisoner. Now, the story doesn't end here. The freed prisoner being exhilarated, it was a eureka moment for him. He decides to go back and enlighten his fellow prisoners who were still in the cave, remember? He goes back excited. How do you think will he be taken? Will he be given a red carpet welcome?
Not at all.
No, right? Unfortunately, it's taken with a pinch of salt. That, my God, क्या आप बोल रहे हो जो मुझे नजर आ रहा है वही सच है, आप पता नहीं क्या क्या मन का कहानी बता रहे हो, because that's how we take it, right? And that's unfortunately or fortunately the plight of a philosopher. Whenever we think that we have the awakened moments and you would want to dialogue it with our fellow mates, they will obviously take it with a pinch of salt. So with this revisiting of Plato's Allegory of the Cave, let me continue. So in the Republic, Plato gives the first sustained philosophical image of epistemic awakening. The prisoner's painful ascent from shadow to light symbolizes the emergence of mind from mediated perception to direct insight. Plato writes, quote from the Republic 515e, when he approaches the light, his eyes will be dazzled and he will not be able to see clearly. The things he now says are true, unquote. The dazzle marks the phenomenology of transition, where cognitive blindness yields to ontological illumination. The light of the sun, the child of the good, stands not for an external source, but for a condition of intelligibility itself, the luminous ground of consciousness. In modern times, Plato's allegory already gestures towards the hard problem of consciousness, why there is something it is like to perceive truth. The freed prisoner experiences what was once only conceptualized. This transition from shadow to light parallels the shift from functional explanation to phenomenal presence in philosophy of mind. Husserl's phenomenological reduction, or epoche, as we understand, echoes this movement. In Ideas 1, he writes, quote, "We put the world in brackets to return to the experience itself," unquote. The freed source ascent is a proto-phenomenological return to the things themselves, anticipating the later insight that consciousness is not an object amongst objects, but the field in which all objects appear. So what are we discussing here? We're discussing here two domains of knowledge as we understand in philosophy of mind. These two domains of knowledge are, firstly, consciousness in itself and consciousness of, or consciousness about. So all that the prisoner had seen all his life was consciousness of, consciousness about. Because, for example, when I say I perceive shadow on the wall, it is consciousness about the world. Meanwhile, when I have a moment of awakening, it is consciousness in itself, and that is precisely the tension, the tug of war in philosophy of mind between consciousness in itself and consciousness of. That is, are they two parallels? Is there a dichotomy between them? Can we merge them? And this brings us in philosophy of mind to four components or four categories, what we call as strong intentional mental content, strong phenomenal mental content, weak intentionalism, and weak anti-intentionalism. What are these four? Quickly. Strong intentional mental states. Husserl, Brentano, for example. For everyone who believes that mental states are always of something or about something, the directionality, the arrow is towards the outside world, it is strong intentional states like I see an object, I hear something, right? Those are strong intentional mental objects. But strong phenomenal mental states are something which are deeply subjective, which are non-representational, which are phenomenal. And because they are phenomenal, they are private. Because they are private, they are ineffable. For example, which I think I often cite in the classroom is whenever I see the Rajdhani train that goes from Delhi to Guwahati, I miss my hometown because it reminds me of the trips I had done as an undergraduate student in Delhi University when I had traveled by a Rajdhani train. Now, Rajdhani train is just not an intentional object for me. It also has traces of phenomenality, the subjectiveness. So that phase is called as the strong phenomenal content. Now, strong intentional mental states and strong phenomenal mental states are extremes. Comes something called a weak phenomenal mental state. What is this weak phenomenal mental state? Weak phenomenal mental state states that mental states are neither completely intentional or only about the of the world, nor is it only private. There is a Venn diagram. There is an in-between zone between these two extremes. My position today is about the weak phenomenal mental state that I will be holding today. And the fourth one, as I had said, is about weak anti-intentional mental states, where they say the mental states are neither phenomenal nor intentional, but there are no really thinkers here. It's only a logical possibility. With this background ahead, I think we are good to go with this introduction. We are good to go with the first major part of our article, Mary. Now, who is Mary? There has been a lot of murmur as to who is Mary. Is she to do with Jesus Mary? Is she to do? No, Mary is just a philosopher of mind, scientist, a color scientist whom we have picked up. And with Mary, which is also called as the Mary's room, the defining keywords would be the knowledge, the qualia, and the explanatory gap that we would be discussing now. Now, this article, which is entitled as Phenomenal Qualia. Remember qualia, which is a part of the phenomenal mental states. So the minute I say qualia, it is to do with subjective, it is to do with ineffability, it is to do with privateness, was written by the phenomenalist thinker Frank Jackson in the year 1982, and we are picking up this very particular sub-paper of his work, which is what Mary did not know. This is our engagement today. Now, Frank Jackson's 1982 thought experiment reframes Plato's ascent in cognitive terms. Mary, the scientist confined to a black and white room, knows every physical fact about color, but has never seen color. Upon leaving the room, she explains, this is what red looks like. Her realization argument against physicalism that complete physical knowledge. Okay, before I come on to the argument, let me give you a brief background about Mary, the scientist. As a thought experiment of Frank Jackson, there is this scientist called Mary. Mary is an acclaimed scientist. She knows everything about sciences, physics, chemistry, chemical properties, brain, whatsoever scientist is supposed to know, she's well versed there. The only glitch is she was always in a black and white room. She had never seen color. She was in a monochromatic room. She had never seen colors. But mind you, she knows the chemical properties of red. She knows the chemical properties of whatever the colors are. But she had never experienced experience. That is, she had never experienced the color red. So, as we said, she knows, right? She knows everything about science, about neurology, about brain functioning. She knows everything. One fine day, she steps out of her closed black and white room. Remember who is she? She's not the prisoner of Plato's cave here. She is an erudite scholar, right? She knows everything. She steps out of the room and she sees a garden of red tomatoes. She picks up a red tomato, she holds it on her palm and she says, wow, red color. That is she does. Wow, red color. She shouldn't have done that. But why does she do? Because all that she had gained was only cognitive, or the physicalist, or the representationalist knowledge, which is consciousness of. उनको सब पता था लाल रंग के बारे में, chemical properties क्या है, कैसा है, तो उनके पास बस एक representational knowledge था. उनके पास क्या कमी था? Phenomenal knowledge की. बाहर आते हैं पहली बार, और जब लाल टमाटर देखिए, एक लाल टमाटर उठाते हैं, बोलते हैं, ओ वाह, लाल टमाटर, जो एक्चुअली उनको नहीं बोलना चाहिए था, क्योंकि उनको तो पता है लाल क्या है, कलर्स क्या है. So this Mary, that she exclaims as wow, that wow, remember it's very private, it's very ineffable. That is, whenever we are surprised, whenever we are shocked, हमारे expressions अलग-अलग हो सकते हैं. कोई wow बोलेगा, कोई कुछ नहीं बोलेगा, कोई शांत रहेगा. इस phenomenal mental states को हम private mental states बोलते हैं. So ये जो article की title है, What Mary Did Not Know. So what did she not know? She did not know the phenomenal mental states. She was well versed with the representational mental states. She was well versed with the cognitive, the consciousness of. She was not well versed with the consciousness in itself. To give you another example, again, doesn't matter, I mean, of course, because I'm from the Northeast, and I keep on telling my students that आप लोग ना छोड़िए, Northeast जाइए, Northeast घूम कर आइए, बहुत प्यारा जगह है. मैं बोलती रहती हूँ अपने students को, आप जाइए, Northeast जाइए. अब मैं जितना भी ना क्यों बोलूँ कि मॉर्निंग लॉन्ग है, मेघालय में cleanest village in Asia, लेकिन जब तक हम खुद से जाकर अनुभव नहीं करेंगे, वो एक्सपीरियंस को एक्सपीरियंस नहीं करेंगे, हमारे लिए वो बस एक रिप्रेजेंटेशनल नॉलेज ही होगा. जब मैंने उसको एक्सपीरियंस किया और मैं खुद से बोलती हूँ वाह, अनन्या मैम ने सही बोला था, कुछ तो है नॉर्थ ईस्ट पे, ये क्या हो जाता है? फिनोमिनल मेंटल स्टेट्स. तो फिनोमिनल मेंटल स्टेट्स से हम लोग थोड़े से we are not accustomed to it, because we have to have the experience of experience. Now that was the whole idea of Mary's argument. I hope I'm clear so far. Are we all on the same page?
Yes.
I hope this is okay, right? Right. So Mary realizes, her realization, what does it state to us then? That it exposes the knowledge argument against physicalism. Physicalism क्या था? Consciousness of, remember consciousness about? So Mary का जो argument है वो phenomenalism, and that is why it is called as knowledge argument. The very name of this paper or the argument is knowledge argument. So her realization exposes the knowledge argument against physicalism, that complete physical knowledge of a phenomena does not entail knowledge of its qualitative character. As Jackson puts it, quote, Mary learns something new about the world and our visual. Remember, she was a scientist, पूरा ज्ञानी, आपको क्या ही वो सीख सकते थे, पर उन्होंने सीखा जब वो बाहर आए उनकी ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट रूम से और कलर के साथ जब उनका परिचित हुआ, उन्होंने कुछ और नया सीखा जो किताबी दुनिया से अलग था. Right? Now, what are the arguments here? And इस article के arguments हमें कहाँ पर ले जाए? So the implications are vast. Firstly, the mind-body problem, which again, I'm sure you all are acquainted with René Descartes. Remember, dubito ergo sum से cogito ergo sum ले जाते हैं हमें. So अगर René Descartes नहीं होता तो mind-body dualism का problem कभी होता ही नहीं. And in a way, that's why we say in philosophy of mind, the father, जैसे father of philosophy हम theories बोलते हैं, father of philosophy of mind, René Descartes को usually ये दिया जाता है. And however, René Descartes is the 17th century philosopher, 17th century modern time. तो एक सवाल आता है कि ancient time, Greece time में कोई था ही नहीं क्या? जो जिन्होंने philosophy of mind के ऊपर काम किया है या who could be called as a father of philosophy? Obviously, there are many, and we know Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, बहुत सारे हैं. लेकिन रेने डेकार्ट को इसलिए बोले जाते हैं because René Descartes in a very systematic manner he started his dubito ergo sum methodology, which then of course led us to the cogito ergo sum via the three arguments, the dream argument, which we know, an argument again that we are all very versed with, and the argument from sense perception. And he realizes that for knowledge to be clear and distinct, clarity and distinctness, which is the hallmark of knowledge, that is, everything is dubitable, सब कुछ doubtful है, everything कोई चीज़ है ही नहीं, which can be indubitable. So the only indubitable thing is
the one who doubts.
The doubt itself. ये doubt ही एक ऐसा चीज़ है जो बिल्कुल indubitable है. So he says, I doubt, therefore I am. I doubt, तो मैं doubt कर रही हूँ, तो एक doubter मतलब मैं भी हूँ, तो I doubt, therefore I am. So that was his first premise. अब doubt क्या है? Doubt is a part of the mental activity, part of the mind. दिमाग तो खाली डाउट ही नहीं करता रहता ना कि अच्छा ये इसने मेरा फोन नहीं उठाया. No, I mean there are many other things that the brain does, right? We calculate, we hope, we dream, we think कि आज का दिन खराब गया, कल सही होगा. क्या है ये? Hope, calculate कि अच्छा मैं लक्सा में हूँ, लक्सा से मुझे लंका पहुँचने के लिए 15-20 minutes लगेगा, buffering time में और 15 minutes, half an hour से पहले मुझे. So what does the brain do? The brain also calculates, right? The brain hopes, the brain thinks. So hoping, calculating, doubting, they are all subsets of the brain. So René Descartes in his later stage substituted the subset with the superset. तो superset क्या हो गया? Cogito, the brain हो गया, the mind हो गया. So उनका जो ये thesis, ये जो premise था पहले dubito ergo sum, इन्होंने replace किया cogito ergo sum, which we all know as I think, therefore I am. अच्छा, इसमें क्या हो गया? Thinking को पहला status मिल गया, right? Which is called as disembodied cogito. Disembodied, not embodied. Disembodied मतलब बिना शरीर का भी mind main है, body can take a back seat. Body का तो जरूरत है नहीं. That is where the entire philosophy of mind started. तो ये जो consciousness of या की जो मैं बारे में बोल रही हूँ, ये Cartesian dualism का ही इन्होंने एक offshoot है, philosophy of mind की problem है. Because all of us know, again, when I say about mind and body as embodied, it is just not, मतलब मैं हूँ क्योंकि मेरा ऐसा नहीं है कि बस शरीर है, दिमाग है. The kind of books I have read, the kind of thought process I carry, the kind of culture that I come from, the kind of friends that I have, that makes me, right? So it is always an embodied zone. It cannot be a disembodied entity. This is where, again, we know Gilbert Wright and criticized René Descartes right, left, and center, behaviorists before. The philosophy of mind journey started, right? So, coming from there, the implications, as I had said, was the mind-body problem resurfaces the tension between the third-person explanation and the first-person revelation. So in a way, we are going from representation to revelation, revealed. रिप्रेजेंटेशन क्या था? कॉन्शियसनेस ऑफ. रिवील क्या हो गया? जैसे प्लेटो का द सन, इफ यू रिमेंबर, और मैरी का वाव, लाल रंग, रिमेंबर. तो वो क्या हो रहा है? रिवीलेशन का स्टेज. सो फ्रॉम रिप्रेजेंटेशन टू रिवीलेशन का स्टेज का जो जर्नी है, हम कैसे उस जर्नी को डिसाइड करते हैं? वो कंटिन्यूटी में है, वो ब्रेक्स में है, उसमें गैप्स है. सो दिस इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट फिलॉसफी ऑफ माइंड एंड थ्योरिस्ट डज. दैट इज द फर्स्ट टेकअवे. द सेकंड टेकअवे इस गैप को, कौन सी गैप? कॉन्शियसनेस ऑफ और कॉन्शियसनेस इन इटसेल्फ, और थर्ड पर्सन रिप्रेजेंटेशन एंड रिवीलेशन का जो गैप है, एक्सप्लेनेटरी गैप बोलते हैं फिलॉसफी ऑफ माइंड में. ये जो टर्म एक्सप्लेनेटरी गैप, इसे लेविन ने 1983 में इंट्रोड्यूस किया था. तब से हम फिलॉसफी ऑफ माइंड में इस गैप को द एक्सप्लेनेटरी गैप बोलते हैं. एंड द अदर टेकअवे इज द एक्सप्लेनेटरी गैप describes our inability to explain why physical processes produce the subjective experience. कई बार ऐसा होता है कि फॉर एग्जांपल मैं घर से कॉलेज की तरफ जा रही हूँ, 10 बार भी राजधानी ट्रेन मेरे सामने अगर पास भी होए, मुझे नॉस्टैल्जिक फीलिंग होगा ही नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि मेरे एजेंडा है, मुझे इतना बजे कॉलेज पहुँचना है, जाकर एग्जाम का ड्यूटी करना ही है या जो भी. सो इट इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट. वही सिमिलर सेटिंग्स में, वही सिमिलर हमारी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव मोड में कोई चीज़ एक्टिवेट हो सकता है, कभी कभी नहीं हो सकता है. सो दैट इज वेयर द क्वालिया प्रॉब्लम अकर्स. द थर्ड पॉइंट, द क्वालिया, एंड क्वालिया को फेमस किया है फिलॉसफी ऑफ माइंड Thomas Nagel in his 1974 paper, What It Is Like to Be a Bat. This is where he comes up, and the qualia problem questions whether mental states have an intrinsic, irreducible, what it is like quality here. अब थोड़ा सा मैं नेगल के बारे में यहाँ पर कहना चाहती हूँ. नेगल की ये आर्टिकल फिलॉसफी माइंड में बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट है. What it is like to be a bat. इसका मतलब ये है कि मैं जितना भी मैं रिप्रेजेंटेशनल मोड ऑफ नॉलेज मेरे पास ना हो, मुझे फॉर एग्जांपल बैट के ऊपर रिसर्च करना है, तो मैं क्या बन गई? मैं बैट का जैसे इनका मैट्रिक्स होता है, रात को इनका विजिबिलिटी ज़्यादा है, खुद में क्या बोलते हैं जैसे लाइक अपसाइड डाउन में हैंग हो गया है ट्री में. आई हैव डन एवरीथिंग टू बी लाइक अ बैट. मैंने बैट का कॉस्ट्यूम आपने शायद स्कूल में फैंसी ड्रेस में कभी बैटमैन जैसा, कभी शायद इसलिए क्लियोपेट्रा. तो मैं जितना भी शक्तिमान खुद का नहीं सोचूं, इनका पूरा कॉस्ट्यूम पहन लिया, मैं तो शक्तिमान नहीं बनूंगी, है ना. मैं बस एक बहरूपिया हूँ शक्तिमान के नाम पे, या बैटमैन के नाम पे मैं एक बहरूपिया ही हूँ. सो मैं जो भी बैट का जैसे मैं क्यों भी ना करूँ. Remember the article's name was What It Is Like to Be a Bat. Will I be like a bat? मैं हो पाऊंगी क्या बैट के जैसा? नहीं. Precisely. So मैं क्या हो पा रही थी? I was only being a representation of the consciousness of. Consciousness in itself बोलने के लिए मुझे बैट का जैसा जन्म लेना पड़ेगा, तभी मुझे पता चलेगा what it is like to be a bat. मतलब there is an explanatory gap between the consciousness of and consciousness in itself. I hope I'm clear here. Okay. So going ahead with this, David Chalmers, again in philosophy of mind, he is the other very significant philosopher of mind who had introduced the hard problem of consciousness and the easy problem of consciousness. Now what are these? These are nothing but we have been talking about consciousness of and consciousness in itself. Now David says the easy problem or the soft problem of consciousness are those consciousness, which you remember, hoping, thinking, जो हमने डेकार्ट के समय में बात की थी, जो कि हम दिखा सकते हैं. Hoping, thinking, willing, calculating, accounting. These are scientifically proved, neurologically tested. These are the easy problem of consciousness. What is the hard problem of consciousness? The phenomenological reduction, the epoche, the qualia. That is the hard problem of consciousness. So that hard problem of consciousness remains hard. Why? Because there is an explanatory gap. This is where the argument is taking us forward. Now, again, there's this other philosopher called Professor Daniel Dennett, who is a representationalist. Who is a representationalist? A physicalist. Physicalist कौन है? Consciousness of, है ना? Phenomenalist कौन है? Consciousness in itself. So दो प्रकार के लोग आ जाते हैं. एक कॉन्शियसनेस ऑफ हो गया है, डैनियल डैनेट, राइट. कॉन्शियसनेस इन इटसेल्फ में कौन आ जाएगा? फ्रैंक जैक्सन, थॉमस नेगल एंड हमारे डैनियल डैनेट आ जाते हैं विद डेविड चैम्बर्स. Am I clear so far, students?
Yes.
Is it clear? Now, what Daniel Dennett argues that Mary learns no new fact but gains a new ability. Phenomenologists like Maurice Merleau-Ponty challenges this reduction. Merleau-Ponty states that for Merleau-Ponty, perception is not a science of the world, but the background from which all are derived. In his book Phenomenology of Perception, उन्होंने ये बात बोली है. And the beauty of Maurice Merleau-Ponty's work is, the phenomenology of body. देखिए, with our Rendekar is always mind, mind, mind. That was being celebrated. There's a U-turn there. And Mary's awakening, therefore, Mary का क्या awakening था? Wow, the representational. That's a moment of awakening. So Mary's awakening, therefore, is not epistemic. मतलब ये बस आपके ज्ञान से नहीं होता है. वो आपको experienced, right? So Mary's awakening, therefore, is not epistemic but existential and phenomenological. Her consciousness now participates in the world's unfolding. In Husserlian terms, she moves from intentionality, the directedness, which is the consciousness of, towards an object to self-givenness, the pre-reflective awareness that constitutes all knowing. This is consciousness awakening to itself as the condition of all experience. With this, now I come to the last segment of my article, where I have tried to interconnect it with Krishna and Arjuna's, the Vishwarupa. Okay, and let us see how this argument takes us. So the last section of my paper is Arjuna's Vishwarupa, the phenomenology of the infinite. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita's Vishwarupa Darshana, chapter 11, presents a theophany that surpasses both sensory and intellectual categories. When Krishna grants Arjuna the divine sight, Divya Chaksu, the world's multiplicity appears as one all-encompassing consciousness. I'm quoting from Gita here, translated by Radha Krishnan, chapter 11. Quote, I see you without beginning, middle, or end, infinite in power. The sun and moon are your eyes. The burning fire is your mouth. You scorch the universe with your radiance. This is a quote I have picked up here. Now, this movement is phenomenologically analogous to the unmediated givenness of the world in Huzur, or the non-positional self-awareness in Sarth. Arjun's fear, what was Arjun's fear? The world strangle, and I'm quoting here again, the world strangle and so do I. So what did Arjun tell to Krishna? That no, I don't want to see the Vishwarupa form of yours. I'm trembling, please. I want my friend, charioteer Arjuna, जो मुझे पता है. So that was also a revealed experience for Arjuna, जब उन्होंने देखा कि कृष्णा का वो विश्वरूपा, जो उनका स्वरूप है, वो विश्वरूपा, and Arjuna said, no, I don't want to see that. I hope you're understanding the connect here. 3 things हमने यहाँ पर बताया है. पहले था Plato's Allegory of the cave, when the prisoner goes out of the cave and he's like, oh wow, the sun, the source. Remember, that was stage 1. Stage 2 क्या है? Frank Jackson's article, Mary. I hope now there's no confusion with who Mary is, the scientist, right? And she goes out, and then, wow, the red color. तुमको पता था, okay? And then we are bringing it with Krishna Arjuna's Vishwarupa, when Krishna is a friend, charioteer, but when he revealed himself, it was too much for Arjuna to take it. Okay? So, Arjuna's fear, the world scramble, and so do I, and that is again Gita chapter 11, reveals the existential cost of awakening. मतलब आपको आसानी से नहीं मिलेगा, जैसे ऐसा had said, when the freed prisoner sees the sun. Remember, he's excited, he comes back. Yeah, I should enlighten my fellow mates too. इनको तो red carpet welcome किसी ने नहीं दिया, उनको तो किसी ने बोला कि वाह वाह, क्या बोला? My God, what's wrong with you?
He's gone mad.
Right? So we have to pay a price for revelation or being in that state. And It reveals the existential cost of awakening. To perceive being in its totality is to experience the collapse of subject-object dichotomy. And this is where big intentionalism is all about. जब हमने वो विश्व रूप देख लिया है, जब हमने रेडनेस को पहली बार महसूस किया है, जब मैंने सन का ल्यूमिनोसिटी को देखा है, तब मेरे लिए सेल्फ वर्सेस द अदर या कॉन्शियसनेस इन इटसेल्फ, कॉन्शियसनेस ऑफ द डिबेट कहीं ना कहीं ब्लर हो जाता है, क्योंकि मैं जब तक एक्नॉलेज नहीं करूंगी दैट ऐसा एक गैप है, देयर इज अ explanatory gap, I will never be able to do justice. And the beauty of philosophy is open-ended. Because philosophy is open-ended, it is barely the case that my way or highway. Remember Jainism's अनेकांतवाद और स्यादवाद, इनके लिए हमारी बहुत सारी है. And I must mention this as a footnote here. Frank Jackson, though he had started off as a strong phenomenalist, with his debates and arguments with Professor Daniel Dennett, he converted himself into a representationalist or into a strong physicalist. So, ये philosophy of mind, or as a that matter, in philosophy there is no hard and fast rule that अगर आप phenomenalist रहोगे तो आपको phenomenalist ही get tagged. It's fluid. Whatever arguments are convincing you, and that is what knowledge is, right? We are learning every time. We are gaining every time. So here consciousness ceases to be about the world, it becomes the field through which the world manifests. The Vishwarupa vision therefore performs the phenomenology, what phenomenology theorizes, the inseparability of consciousness and world. So consciousness and world actually inseparate anyway. It's in continuity, okay? So this also challenges Cartesian dualism, and the Atman Brahman identity of the Upanishads. Chandogya Upanishad that thou art. So it proposes that consciousness is not property in the world, but the reality of the world. Arjuna's awakening thus parallels, marries, both move from knowledge about being to the lived realization as being, the lived experience. That's where phenomenology comes. I'm wrapping up the paper now. So consciousness of and consciousness in itself, this article has tried to, in a way, to bridge the two traditions. So the recurring philosophical problem across these narratives is the relation between consciousness and its contents. In analytic philosophy of mind, there is the tension between excess consciousness, which in a way you can understand as the easy problem of consciousness, जहाँ पर आपका excess होता है, right? Excess consciousness, which is जो मेथड चीज़ों को आप रिपोर्ट कर सकते हो, right? Those are called as excess consciousness or functional consciousness, and phenomenal consciousness, which is qualitative or the lived experience. And in phenomenology, the same divide appears as intentional consciousness directed towards the world and pre-reflective self-awareness, illumination of the world. Sartre articulates this unity in Alien Nothingness, 1943, as we know. Taking his quotation here, consciousness is consciousness of something. The minute we say consciousness of, remember, intentional consciousness, but then he also says, and at the same time, consciousness of itself as consciousness of that thing. So it, Sartre, so they come under, as philosophers of mind, we will take them as big phenomenalists who bridges this problem or identifies this problem. Indian philosophy, thank you so much. Indian philosophy deepens this insight. The Upanishadic seers already conceived consciousness as Swayam Prakasha, which is self-luminous awareness that reveals itself by revealing all. This anticipates Thomas Metzinger is yet another philosopher of mind problem. Metzinger's critique of the phenomenal self-model, which holds that the sense of I is itself a representational construct. So the Eastern view dissolves the construct altogether. So Chitta, pure consciousness, has no object but itself. Thus the true hard problem of consciousness may not be explaining how the brain gives rise to qualia, but how awareness becomes divided against itself, how consciousness forgets its own luminosity and must, like Plato's prisoner, or Mary, or Arjuna, awaken again. And in this way, the journey from cave to color to the Vishwarupa, the Phenomenology of Awakening, charts the same philosophical terrain traversed by philosophy of mind, from the representational to the phenomenal, from functional cognition to late awareness, and each episode, whether Plato's prisoner, Mary's awakening, Arjuna's vision, reveals that consciousness is not an object to be explained, but the condition of explanation itself. The heart problem, the explanatory gap, the mind-body divide, all points back to a deeper truth, which is that consciousness is not the world, but the world is in consciousness. And phenomenology gives the language of givenness. The Gita expresses it as darshana, saying as being seen. In both, awakening is not accumulation, but transformation. The passage from epistemic distance to ontologically intimacy. And as Merleau-Ponty concludes, and I'm so in my concluding quote, the world is not what I think, but what I live through. The cave, the color, the cosmic vision, the Vishwarupa, all signify the same moment, consciousness recognizing the light by which all things are seen. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ananya Barua, for such a brainstorming lecture. And I think they all have certain queries. So the floor is open for discussion. And yeah, I think Anupam, come.
Thank you मैम for such a awakening speech. आज जब मैं सुबह आया तो प्रियंका मैम ने बोला कि चारों तरफ awakening है, तो बहुत दिन के बाद मैं डिपार्टमेंट आया। तो मेरा सवाल मेटाफिजिक्स के ऊपर है कि जो explanatory gap है consciousness of an in, how can we define metaphysics and existence of metaphysics क्या है?
Thank you, Anupam, for the question. Now, the minute one is from the domain of physics or science, understand that it is clearly consciousness of domain. For example, when I say that, I remember your name, for example, scientifically what will I say? The hippocampal part of my brain is activated. I am addressing it as functional, the hippocampal part of the brain. I think I'm loud enough, you can hear me.
Ma'am, you can go over there on the mic. It would be better.
Okay. So, scientifically, via functionalism or via identity, I'll say the hippocampal part of the brain is activated. However, I will remember, whenever I remember your name, I will remember it with vis-a-vis an embodied existence of yours. That precisely is a hard problem of consciousness because that science can never explain. As I had said, it can be activated, it may not be activated. So this is where we are telling that gap, that explanatory gap remains, and it will remain. Okay. Yes, Neeti. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ananya ma'am. It was a wonderful lecture, I would say, and you have a great capacity to wind up and draw the attention of the audience so much. And I hope all the students are aligning so far with your every statement, and that's a wonderful thing. I'm really so much enjoying your talk. And for the further clarification from my students' point of view, I would ask two questions. The first one is, can you connect all these things with 2 points, knowing how, knowing that? One thing. And the second, whenever we are told by somebody who is already somebody like a revealed one, a revealed person, or who has attained something kind of revelation, and when they come to us and when they tell us that this is something we have just known about, just like what happened with Ramakrishna Paramahansa, people start calling them crazy person, they have gone mad, and they are not very, in your language, not very welcoming, or welcoming you with a red carpet. Rather, they are going to spoil you because we are not comfortable enough to leave our comfortable place. So we want to stick up with our comfortable zone, and why it happens. So like philosophically, socially, or metaphysically, psychologically, on the cognitive level, what happens that we people are so abstinent or so much intrigued in our own belief system, and it's very hard to change our mindset or belief system. So these questions are there, and I hope you will very well answer it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neeti ma'am, for this two lovely questions. The first question is, if I remember, can we bridge the gap, or is there a solution to all of these?
Knowing how and knowing that.
Knowing how and the way it is. That has been my position in which is the big intentionalism, where we try, because please understand, in philosophy, unlike in other social sciences like say sociology, political science, what is our methodology? Our methodology is our thinking. As I often tell, that जिस दिन हमने सोचना बंद कर दिया, हमारा लेबोरेटरी बंद हो जाएंगे. So हमारी hands proof कोई litmus test या scientific apparatus तो है नहीं कि हम proof करें. तो हम कैसे proof करते हैं? हम अपनी thinking power से ही with books and hermeneutics or critical methodology or whatever it could be. Now here, I think Dan Zahavi, who has been one of the greatest again philosophers of mind, Dan Zahavi talks that this tension between can be bridged when we, for example, elevate to the level of, say for example, एक है sympathy, एक है empathy. Now sympathy and empathy both are pathos, emotions, whatever. But in sympathy, when I say, oh, I'm really sorry, I have my sympathies for you, there is a gap between the self versus the other.
True.
But Dan Zahavi would say, because he's a big intentionalist again, that for me, I would rather try to live it through by making it empathy. And the minute it is empathy, the distinction between self versus the other becomes blurred. So empathy, for example, that was his way of explaining. These are certain terminologies where philosophers of mind we pick up. But again, let me tell you, Dan Zahavi has now gone beyond empathy. So much so that there is a book by Professor Bloom where he says against empathy, a rationalistic interpretation. So now there are also philosophers who argue whether being empathetic is good enough, or whether it actually divides bridges the gap. So that is there. About the second issue that you had said, that why is it that we're into that that zone and it takes us time or whatever. Again, I think because the Ganga is here, and anything which is a lived experience, to even give the water, the blessings of Ganga, the receiver also has to be worthy enough.
Yep.
So it is not only about the giver, it is about the receiver to have the similar wavelength. आप जितना भी ढाल रहे हो, जितना भी आप pour out कर रहे हो, लेकिन receiver का वो है ही नहीं, तो वो कैसे receive करेंगे कैसे? तो उनको भी so know and knowing, perceive and perceive, जो एक blur है, जो एक gap है, उसे वो खत्म करने के लिए एक wavelength में दोनों का होना जरूरी है.
Both should be on the same page.
Yes, only then will it be a lived experience. Need to that gap is really knowledge.
Yeah, wonderful, ma'am. Thank you.
Any question?
I have a question regarding bifurcation of consciousness between consciousness of something and consciousness in itself. So, as far as I can think, like we usually what we experience is a consciousness about something. Okay, so we remain in that state. So the problem arises when you say like. When we divide consciousness in like consciousness in itself. So we don't know about any consciousness which is not about something. We always have experienced consciousness. Yeah, consciousness is intentional in its very nature. So, and we can explain like I mean, what Markovika have also said, like the very nature in that sense would be that consciousness is translated to be in nothingness, the pure consciousness. So, apart from that, we can't say anything about that consciousness in itself. So, if you could, let's see.
What's your name, Neeta?
Hello.
Thank you, Alok, for this question. So, I think that way, you end up becoming more closer to Husserl, Brentano, and others, for whom they are intentionalists, and they would say, well, mental states is always consciousness of or consciousness about. But that's why Frank Jackson, Thomas Nagel, remember, would say that, but then what Mary didn't know, what didn't Mary know, or what it is like to be a bat. That doesn't matter how much of physical scientists or representationalists try, the problem of qualia remains. And this entire problem started thanks to René Descartes. Problem of the mind-body problem had mind and body being two separate entities, हवा में float हो रहा था, तो problem होता ही नहीं. Problem होता है बस एक unit में है ना, mind भी यहाँ पर है, body भी यहाँ पर है. Happily अपने mind को अलग कर दिया, body को. That is where the problem is, and that is why philosophy of mind makes René Descartes as the father of philosophy of mind, not Brentano, not Husserl, or not the strong intentionalists, as for that matter, the strong phenomenalists. Okay? Hello, I hope I have answered. Thank you. I'm so happy. No, जैसे मैंने बोला था, जिस दिन हमारा discussion खत्म, philosophy का laboratory खत्म, तो जब तक questions रहेगा, प्रश्न रहेंगे, philosophy जिंदा है. So मुझे तो मुझे अच्छा लग रहा है कि कोई ने मुझे फिर से आ रही है.
I have a question regarding that you have given us the example of allegory of cave of Plato and the thought experiment of Mary. So, if I see that the shadow is related to the illusion and the sun you have given example as a light that is the true knowledge. So if we see that from moving to the shadow to the sun or the Mary that is in the white and the black room, if she sees color, then she had a different experience. So if we apply these things in our living world, okay, so what I see that in our living world, we see that this is more or less, our thinking is, it is comparable to the shadow, that this is illusion, the world that we are living in the shadow state. These are the mindset that we typically relate. So is it not surrendering of something, like there is a perfect world, like Plato may say that, and the imaginary world and the ideal of world. So that is the perfect, and so we see that we are inferior, we are something lacking. Okay, so a perfect, a good, a better world in this world, and how can true world if we relate it to the Naya of the Jainis? There is a system of anekantva, and if we see that in the Naya part there is a partial knowledge. So if we know about any object partially, it means that that is the true knowledge, but we can know something, the portion of anything. But that is true. And the Kevali may know the all kind of knowledge of particular object or anything. So, is it possible in this whole world that the true knowledge, the sunlight, and the color may seen in by us?
Yeah,
Kamlesh.
Thank you, Kamlesh, for this very fascinating question. Okay, so I think, it is the saying of which we all know, we have all chanted, Om Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityurma Amritangamaya. Precisely, this is what it is. The minute we skip, and when I say chant, I just don't mean such chants, I also mean that we understand where we stand. I understand that where I'm coming from. I understand that I have my flaws, and I understand that. And see, again, the minute we feel I'm inferior, means there's someone who's superior. And in the context of Plato's argument, or in the context of the Vishwarupa, which I had just about mentioned, remember, even when Buddha had an enlightenment, what did Buddha do? He didn't say, hey, Chaka bye bye, I'm going. Aap log apna dekh lijiyega. No, he comes back to samsara. And imagine not everyone has attained that moment to be a Buddha alive, but he comes back. Precisely, we are all in shadows. We are all imperfect. But अगर हमने कोशिश करना ही छोड़ दिया कि यार मरना तो है, जैसे myself and Priyanka ma'am was having a discussion, and I can be candid here, Priyanka ma'am, she was saying, अनन्या क्या यार मरना तो है नहीं यार, पेपर लिखकर तो क्या ही होगा, मरेंगे तो मरेंगे, जब मरेंगे अच्छा है कि हम जी कर मरे, ऐसा नहीं कि मर के हम जी रहे हैं ना. So जो भी हमसे क्षमता, हमारा जो भी कोशिश रहे, कर लीजिए, करना चाहिए. भले, and please understand, the journey is never linear कि आज मैंने ये किया कल मैं वहाँ तक. It is spiral. कभी ऊपर कभी नीचे, कभी डिप्रेशन, कभी लगेगा कि क्या यार, let me just give up. It is how it is. The spiral growth, and that is the beauty of it. So, and it is all, as I always say, it is not about the intensity, it is about the consistency. Consistent रहना है हमें, भले यहाँ से वहाँ क्यों ना हो जाए. Last example I will give to just explain you maybe. Doesn't matter how bad a date has been until my biological clock is very good, where I wake up in the Brahma Muhurat or whatever, I set an alarm कि कल मुझे इतना बजे सुबह उठना है, which means hope. जिस दिन hope खत्म हो गया है, सब खत्म.
The show must go on.
Yes, precisely. So जब तक हम सब अलार्म क्लॉक लगाकर सो रहे हैं, मतलब हमें डार्कनेस से लाइट की तरफ जाने का अभी भी कहीं ना कहीं इच्छा है, और वो होना चाहिए. I hope you have understood. I have given me philosophically responded. I hope that is clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Yeah. Any more questions? I better stand here.
We are not aware of the concept of consciousness of something, but there is a concept called consciousness of consciousness, where consciousness observes consciousness. Consciousness gets detached from consciousness and becomes the observer of consciousness. Can you throw some light on it?
Okay. Rupam, thank you so much. I think again it's a beautiful question. It's a metaphysical question. The minute we say consciousness of consciousness, it is like the photographer clicking a photo, behind him there's somebody else clicking it. So वही वाला चीज है जो आपने देखा होगा एक फोटो से ऐसे it just parallels out, it spans out. So consciousness of consciousness, it becomes a meta consciousness event, and my engagement has been more epistemic and cognitive consciousness. I have not really delved into the realm of metaphysical consciousness, so I was very clear in the very beginning that my engagement today would be epistemic consciousness, but thank you. Your question belongs to the realm of the meta level of consciousness. I'll just stand here. Any more questions so that, yeah.
There is no question online. Someone raised a hand, right? Yeah, somebody. I think there are questions online.
now, the condition of the man is not now in the cave. We are living in a digitization and modern world. The technological advancement has made us to cover the gap from the cave to the quantum. So don't you think the artificial intelligence is going to overlap the epistemic gap and the present criteria of the phenomenology? Leads to some other way. And secondly, my question is as far as the revelation and the Bhagavad Gita you have mentioned. See, many religions has demarcated some of the paths, but nobody has able to reach that destination. So how this lacuna of a human desire and technological advancement will lead us to the safer paths leading ahead with the phenomenology. So don't you think that the cognition and the epistemology, metaphysics and logic ethics are now going to be overlapped with the artificial intelligence? So my concern is regarding the future danger also. So I want your remark on this.
Thank you so much, Diwakar. I think I'll take up your first question, the second question first. So you have said that it isn't the case, that the destination of body has arrived. Let me tell you, I think the journey is more important, and I'll give you an example here. Another story. I hope that it helps you. When Mirabai, of course we all understand Mirabai, and she was truly in divine bhakti with Krishna, and then someone tells her that Mirabai, go to the next village. Krishna is there. You will meet him. She goes singing and beautifully. She's all in the rasa of Krishna ji, and she goes there. And then he's not there. Someone said, "Oh, abhi na thodi der bas, wo abhi bas nikal chale hai." We would anticipate she would have been heartbroken that, "Oh, I wish me aur thoda kuch kshan se pehle main aa jati." She is all the more exhilarated. She is so thrilled and she dances and she sings the bhajan with all the more glory. And people are amazed that I thought you had come to meet Krishna and he was just here a few moments back. And then when I had said you have just missed out his golden opportunity, I see you being jubilant. She says, अगर मुझे आज कृष्ण मिल जाते, मेरा भक्ति यही खत्म हो जाता. ये जर्नी यहाँ ही अंत हो जाता. ये जर्नी कंटिन्यू होना है. And मुझे और मिलेगा, मुझे उनसे. So I have to continue the journey. As I always say, destination doesn't matter. Destination में हम पहुंच जाएंगे, जैसे कि डिटूर करके मार-धाड़ खाके डायरेक्टली, जैसे भी जब भी जिसको भी जहाँ भी जितना हमारी सोल इवॉल्व है, माइंड कॉग्निटिवली, सेरेब्रली, न्यूरोलॉजिकली रिच है, जहाँ पर पहुंचना है पहुंच जाएंगे अपनी मेहनत से, अपनी जो भी किस्मत से. Journey important है. This is how I think. Yes, Diwakar.
But basically, this is also a divine desire. Na? This is also an ambition, and enlightenment means a pure bliss in some extent, if I am not wrong. So my question, it would be my opinion. According to you, if Mirabai will get enlightenment of Krishna, don't you think she will choose Krishna there?
See, Mirabai is already enlightened. That is why we know about Mirabai. She doesn't need enlightenment anymore, and not about getting Krishna. In that very process, in that very journey, as I had said in the very beginning of my lecture, our opinions can vary, our moods can vary, and that is why it is Yadvada, it is Anikanvada, it is one thing can have parallel observations. Yes. My argument is, as I had said, weak phenomenalism or weak intentionalism, where I read or I tried to show the mental states are both intentional, vis-a-vis the Venn diagram that I was talking about. It cannot be an extremist position. There has to be balance, which also the Madhyamika Buddhism, Aristotle's golden mean would say. And that is my position. Your position can vary, of course, and which I'm absolutely fine with. We for that is again, as I had said, the beauty of philosophy, where Frank Jackson was a strong phenomenalist, he got converted to strong intentionalist. So ये philosophy हमें ये space देता है कि evolve yourself as far the tailoring that you get at that point of time. So आज मेरा ये धारणा है, कल कुछ और हो सकता है. आज आपका ये धारणा है, कल आपका कुछ और हो सकता है. And that's why we have such seminars. That's why we have such talks. And it is all an evolving process. This is how, at the best, I would like to submit the matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's why we get letter Wittgenstein.
Yes, absolutely.
On the time and the criticism.
Yes, yes, we do that. Absolutely. Yes.
Wonderful.
No, I'm glad. You know, I'm so happy. एक तो पूरा रूम भरा है. You know, मेरा मुझे लगता है सार्थक हुआ मैं आई यहाँ पर. हाँ जी.
Good morning to all respected teacher and welcome ma'am. And thank you so much for enlightening us regarding this topic. My question: in what ways do both Plato and Mary's stories challenge the physicalist account of knowledge and perception? This is my question to you, Dr. Praveen.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yadav. So, in what way Mary's and argument and Plato's argument challenges physicalist? So, till the time the prisoner was in the cave, he was seeing the shadows. It's absolutely physicalist moment or physicalist knowledge. The minute he steps out, and the minute he moves out from physicalism, that is, you know, वो जो journey है, it's very blurred. आप बस ये pinpoint नहीं कर पाते हो कि देखो यहाँ से journey phenomenal की तरफ जा रहा है. It's very much inbuilt. And the minute he sees the sun, the light, and he's like, my God, this is it. I need to tell my fellow prisoners about it. He rushes back. Why does he rush back? जब आपको कुछ नया चीज मिलता है जो पहले आपको पता नहीं था, आप इतना excited हो जाते हो कि आपको लगता है कि मैं और दो चार लोगों को भी बताऊं. That when he, you know, see, he could have said, he could have thought, I mean, this is what I think, that oh thank God, हाँ freedom मिल गया, भाग चलो मैं यहाँ से, कौन दोबारा darkness के पास जा. आते हैं वो वापस cave में फिर से दोबारा से. That is a reformed prisoner, an evolved and enlightened prisoner. Similarly with Mary, as long as Mary, the scientist, the brilliant, you know, color scientist, who knew everything that had to be known, but then when she steps out of the monochromatic room, the black and white room, and she knows the chemical properties of color, red, here in this example as in the article, she picks up the red tomato, and जब वो express करते हैं कि wow, red tomato, you know, वो जो wow moment है, that is again the defining moment. She shouldn't have said the wow, उनको पता है. So before that, it was the physical, the representationalist moments. After that, it is a very, you know, the insight that you get. Yeah? Thank you, Dr. Yadav. And you are,
I can't thank enough Dr. Ananya for giving such a wonderful lecture, and I can see the session was flooded with questions. And now I have Dr. Neeti Singh. I request Dr. Neeti kindly please come over the podium and present the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Priyanka ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to formally thank our distinguished speaker, Dr. Ananya Barua ma'am. And I think everybody is thanking her within the heart. And I would say that it was an amazing session. And thank you so much, Priyanka ma'am, for inviting Ananya ma'am. Because before today, I was just knowing her as a person, but today I came to know that what kind of philosopher she is, what kind of teacher she is, and she's just brilliant. So I'm amazed and I'm very glad to meet you and to listen to you, your points, and I took some takeaway from your lecture. Like very, you know, I'm not actually concluding, I'm just saying that there is a ghazal, a few lines, कि होश वालों को खबर क्या, बेखुदी क्या चीज़ है, इश्क कीजिए फिर समझिए जिंदगी क्या चीज़ है. We know so much about love, life, this, that, plana, dhimkana, but actually, when we experience it, then we know what it is like, what it feels like, what it is to be like. And that is what you concluded your entire paper with, that the world is not what it is, rather the world is what we live through. So this is the entire summary and the gist of her paper, for which I'm really so much wondered and surprised and thanked, and I really thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the entire department that you came here and you spoke so well, you enlightened us, and it was an awakening moment for many of our students who were exclaimed when you were asking them, remember that kid, remember that, and it was amazing. बांध के रखना श्रोता को और देखते रहना कि वो सुन रहे हैं, वो समझ रहे हैं. That is what a teacher should have. So wonderful teacher you are. Thank you so much. And, thank you so much, convener ma'am. Thank you so much, head sir, Professor Durgesh Chaudhary sir, for always ready to conduct such programs. My colleagues, Professor Anand Mishra sir, Dr. Rupen Kumar Yadav sir, Dr. Kalna Yadav ma'am, Professor Bagre sir, and nobody is here, but everyone whosoever is there online and offline, all my students. Thank you so much. I invited you all. Today is Saturday, but I could see the faces of the MS students. I shared the invitation in my group. I invited them all, and many of you have come, all the undergraduate students from Telugu Bhasha class. Thank you so much. You all came here. You made this event a successful one. So thank you so much. And I thank, lastly, those who have actually regulated all these systems. Sorry, I'm forgetting them. Rishikesh and Rishikesh, sorry. Rishikesh, thank you, Rishikesh, and all the departmental staff. And thank you so much all the participants who asked wonderful questions so that we could have a fruitful discussion. So thank you so much, one and all. Thank you.
हाँ मुझे भी आना है. अच्छा.